Have you ever said exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment and still watched her lose interest? You were kind. You were present. You said all the things you thought a good man was supposed to say. And somehow, somewhere in that conversation, something died. The energy shifted. Her eyes went somewhere else. And you were left standing there replaying the whole thing in your head, trying to figure out what went wrong. That feeling, that specific quiet devastation. That's why you're here. And I want you to know something before we go any further. I see you. Not the version of you that performs confidence online. Not the highlight reel. The version of you that has genuinely tried, genuinely showed up, and still walked away confused. That man deserves real answers. Not recycled advice, not lines to memorize, real answers. I'm your host, and this is Echoes of Her Desire, where we uncover the real psychology that creates desire. The kind of deep, lasting attraction that no one ever sat down and explained to you. And I'll warn you now, the final trigger I'm going to share with you today is incredibly powerful. It can change the entire dynamic of how women experience you fast, and almost no one uses it correctly. Most men either never discover it or they overuse it and destroy the very thing it was supposed to build. Stay until the end. You'll understand why. But first, let's talk about what's actually happening. Because the reason you're frustrated isn't what you think it is. You were told a story. From the time you were young, you absorbed a version of attraction that went something like this. Be nice. Be reliable. Show her you care. Make her feel special. And if you do all of that consistently enough, she'll fall for you. So, you did. You texted back quickly. You complimented her. You made yourself available. You put in the effort, the time, the energy, and you did it with a genuinely good heart. And then it didn't work. Maybe she said she just wanted to be friends. Maybe she kept you in the gray zone, warm enough to keep you around, distant enough to keep you confused. Maybe she ended up with someone who from the outside seemed to treat her worse than you ever would. And that particular wound, that one, cuts deep because it makes you question not just your strategy, but your worth. Here's what I need you to hear. This was never your fault. Nobody taught you this. The story you were given about attraction was incomplete. It wasn't malicious. It was just wrong. Because attraction, real attraction, the kind that makes a woman think about you when you're not in the room, the kind that makes her lean in, the kind that creates that pull she can't quite explain. That kind of attraction does not respond to niceness alone. It responds to something deeper, something older, something that lives in the part of the brain that was making decisions long before language even existed. This is not about being cruel. This is not about games. This is not about becoming someone you're not. This is about understanding the actual language of desire and learning to speak it. Because right now you've been trying to connect with a woman's logical mind when attraction is almost entirely an emotional and subconscious experience. You've been sending signals that her thinking brain appreciates, but her deeper instinctive self doesn't register as attractive. That's the sequencing error, not a character flaw. A sequencing error. Let me give you the framework because once you understand this, everything starts to click into place. Evolutionary psychology tells us that female attraction evolved over hundreds of thousands of years with one primary function: pair selection. A woman's subconscious mind, the part she has very little control over, is constantly scanning her environment for signals, not signals of niceness, signals of value, of security, of strength, of emotional groundedness, of the kind of man who can handle the world and still be present with her. This scanning happens below the level of conscious thought. She doesn't decide to feel attracted. It just happens or it doesn't. And the signals that trigger that attraction aren't always what you think they are. They aren't expensive clothes. They aren't perfectly constructed compliments. They aren't carefully crafted text messages designed to seem spontaneous. They are behavioral patterns, energy patterns, the way you hold space, the way you respond under pressure, the way you make her feel about herself when she's around you. There are 7 of these patterns, 7 specific triggers that when you embody them, change the entire way a woman experiences you. And I'm going to walk you through every single one. These aren't tricks. They're not manipulative scripts. They are the real psychological architecture of masculine attractiveness, explained clearly so that you can actually use them. And when you use them with respect and intention, when you bring them into interactions with a genuine heart, something shifts. You stop chasing, you stop performing, and you become the kind of man women actually want to win over. Let's start with the first one, masculine presence. This is the foundation. Everything else rests on this. Presence isn't about being loud or domineering. It's not about taking up space aggressively. Masculine presence is grounded energy. It's the quality of being fully, unshakably here. When most men are around a woman they're attracted to, they leak. Their energy scatters. They start monitoring her reactions. They start editing themselves in real time, adding words, removing words, adjusting their tone, watching her face for signs of approval. And she feels all of that. She doesn't see it consciously, but her subconscious reads it instantly. And what it reads is, this man is not rooted. He's looking to me for his emotional stability. And that on a deep instinctive level is not the signal she's searching for. Masculine presence means you are the same man whether she approves of what you just said or not. Your internal weather doesn't change based on her response. Picture this. You're at a social event. You're talking to her. She makes a slightly dismissive comment about something you said. The average man scrambles. He softens, explains, laughs nervously, tries to recover. The grounded man pauses, smiles slightly, and continues. Not with arrogance, with ease. That difference, that tiny, barely visible difference in response, registers in her nervous system as strength. Be the eye of the storm. Now let's move to the second trigger. Emotional challenge. This one confuses men because they've been told to be agreeable, and here's the truth. Total agreeableness kills attraction. Not because women want conflict, but because the human mind is wired to value what isn't immediately, unconditionally handed over. Emotional challenge means creating gentle polarity, a light, warm friction, a playful resistance that communicates you have your own perspective, your own standards, and you're not just going to mirror everything she says to keep her comfortable. Think of it as a mental sparring match, one you both enjoy. Here's what this looks like. She says something a little self-congratulatory, maybe something like, I'm literally the best cook in my friend group. Instead of agreeing instantly, you lean back slightly and say, that's a big claim. I'm going to need evidence before I can take that seriously. And you smile. There's no cruelty there. There's just a challenge. And something in her responds to that. She laughs. She pushes back. She's engaged. She's awake in a way she wasn't 30 seconds ago. The man who challenges her mind earns her attention. The man who simply validates her becomes invisible. Make her earn your agreement. Third trigger, selective attention. Here is one of the most counterintuitive truths in attraction psychology. Your attention is only valuable to the degree that it isn't freely available to anyone who walks by. When you have a full life, real interests, genuine friendships, ambitions that light you up, creative pursuits that absorb you, your attention becomes a finite resource. And finite resources have value. When a woman is one of many things that matter to you rather than the single gravitational center of your universe, your attention towards her feels like a gift rather than a default. She notices that you're not endlessly available. She notices that you have a world she hasn't fully seen, and that world creates fascination. This is not about playing hard to get. That's a performance. This is about genuinely having a life worth living and allowing her to see glimpses of it rather than immediately offering access to all of it. Think about the last time you were fully absorbed in something, a project, a challenge, a goal, and someone had to work slightly to get your attention. That slight effort created investment. People value what they work for. She is no different. Don't be available. Be interesting. If this is making sense so far, hit subscribe and join the Echoes of Her Desire community. It helps more men learn what they were never taught. There are men watching right now who needed to hear this years ago, just like you. Subscribing takes 2 seconds and it puts more of this directly into your feed. Do it now and let's keep going because we're getting into the deeper triggers now. The ones that most men never even think about, and these are the ones that create the kind of attraction that lasts. Trigger 4, intentional listening. Pay close attention here because this one separates the men who are liked from the men who are desired. Most men, when they listen, are doing one of two things. They're either waiting for their turn to speak or they're performing the appearance of listening while actually just scanning for cues about what to say next. Women feel this immediately. They don't feel heard. They feel processed. Intentional listening means you are genuinely absorbing what she says. You are filing it. And then minutes or hours or days later, you refer back to it in a way she didn't expect. She mentions in passing that she's been stressed about a work presentation. 3 days later, you ask how it went. Not because you were reminded by a notification, because you actually retained it. Because she mattered enough for the detail to stick. That kind of recall does something profound. It tells her that she was seen not for what she looked like, not for what she could offer, but for who she is, for the actual content of her inner world. And that experience of being genuinely seen is so rare that when a man offers it, he becomes unforgettable. Emotional seeing is rare. Be the man who does it. Here's the picture. You're on a second conversation. Coffee, maybe a walk. She casually mentions that she's been trying to learn how to paint, that she's terrible at it, but loves it. Most men nod and move on. You ask a follow-up question. What kind of painting? What does she like about it? 2 weeks later, when you're talking again, you say, how's the painting going? Did you try that technique you were frustrated about? She stops. Her eyes change. Because in a world full of men who were mentally composing their next sentence while she was talking, you actually listened. You become the man she remembers. Trigger 5, calibrated vulnerability. This is one of the most misunderstood concepts in modern dating, and I want to clear up the confusion right now. You've probably heard that being vulnerable is attractive, and that's partially true. But the way most men interpret this advice takes them in completely the wrong direction. They open up too much too fast about pain, about past wounds, about insecurities, searching for emotional connection through disclosure. And instead of building intimacy, it creates discomfort. It makes her feel responsible for your emotional state. It signals fragility rather than depth. Calibrated vulnerability is different. It's the art of sharing real things about yourself, the parts that make you human without offloading, without collapsing, without making her the container for your unprocessed pain. It means you can talk about a challenge you faced with steadiness. You can admit something you don't know without it threatening your identity. You can share a loss, a failure, a fear, and do it from a place of, this is part of my story, and I've grown through it, rather than I'm still bleeding, and I need you to help me hold this. This calibrated openness says something powerful. It says, I am secure enough to be real. And that combination, security with realness, is deeply attractive. Here's what this looks like. You're deep in a conversation and she asks about something hard, maybe a tough period in your life. You don't deflect. You don't perform toughness by shutting down. You say, yeah, there was a stretch where I lost some direction. It was uncomfortable, but it taught me something I genuinely needed to learn. That's it. You don't spiral. You don't overshare. You offer a real glimpse framed with self-awareness, and you move forward from it. Let her see your depth, not your wounds. Trigger 6, gradual physical touch. Physical connection is one of the most powerful and most mishandled aspects of building attraction. The science here is clear. Light, appropriate, respectful physical touch triggers oxytocin release in both parties. Oxytocin is the bonding chemical. It creates warmth, trust, and closeness. It's the same neurochemical that builds the sense of connection between a mother and a child, between close friends, between partners, and it builds between strangers too. When touch is introduced gradually, naturally, and with complete respect. The key word is gradual. Most men either avoid touch entirely because they're afraid of misreading the moment, or they reach for more physical closeness too quickly and create discomfort. The sweet spot is somewhere in between. Light, socially acceptable, contextually natural touch that slowly builds familiarity. This looks like a brief, casual touch on the forearm when you're making a point, guiding her gently by the small of her back as you both navigate a crowded space. A brief warm touch on the shoulder when she says something genuinely funny. None of this is aggressive. None of it is pushy. All of it is real. And all of it registers in her nervous system as warmth and closeness. And here's the thing about this trigger. It isn't something you do to her. It's something that happens between you. It's mutual. And when you do it right, when it's natural and unhurried and she never feels pressured, it creates an invisible thread of physical connection that builds slowly and powerfully over time. Touch is a language. Learn to speak it softly. Now, we arrive at the 7th trigger. This is the one I warned you about at the beginning. This is the most potent tool in the entire framework, and it is the one almost no man understands well enough to use correctly. Controlled unpredictability. Stay with me here because I need you to understand this deeply. The human brain is wired by evolution to pay extraordinary attention to anything it cannot fully predict. This is a survival mechanism. Predictability signals safety, but it also signals that there's nothing more to discover. Unpredictability signals novelty. And novelty triggers dopamine, the neurochemical of anticipation, desire, and craving. When your behavior is completely predictable. When she always knows exactly how you'll respond. When she can map your reactions before they happen. When she can predict your enthusiasm, your availability, your level of interest. Her brain essentially files you as known territory, and known territory doesn't create excitement. Known territory is comfortable, but comfort and desire are very different experiences. Controlled unpredictability doesn't mean being unreliable or chaotic or deliberately cold. It means introducing genuine, authentic variation into your behavior. It means sometimes your response to her message is warm and engaged, and sometimes it's brief and focused because you're genuinely absorbed in your own life. It means sometimes you extend the conversation naturally, and sometimes you end it first at the peak, leaving her with energy still in the air between you. It means sometimes you give a compliment that she didn't expect, and sometimes you are so genuinely present and interested in what she's saying that the compliment never comes, and the absence of it somehow makes her more aware of wanting it. The brain chases what it can't fully capture. Dopamine isn't released when you get the reward, it's released in the anticipation of the reward, in the not quite knowing, in the almost. This is why the man who responds to every message within minutes, who always says the perfectly warm thing, who is endlessly available and consistently enthusiastic, often loses to the man who is sometimes fully present and sometimes slightly distant. Not because the distant man is better, but because unpredictability keeps her nervous system engaged. Here's the important ethical dimension of this trigger, because I won't teach you something without giving you the full picture. This is not about creating anxiety. It is not about being deliberately cold or confusing to make someone feel insecure. That's not attraction. That's harm. The difference between toxic unpredictability and healthy unpredictability is the source. Toxic unpredictability is a performance, a strategy designed to manipulate. Healthy unpredictability is simply being a man who has a rich internal world, genuine moods, real interests, a life that sometimes absorbs him completely, and who doesn't manage his own emotional expression just to keep someone else comfortable. The version I'm describing emerges naturally when you are actually living fully. When you have things that matter to you beyond any one woman. When you're not performing anything. When you're just being a real, complex, interesting human being with good days and focused days and quiet days, and you let her see that variety without apologizing for it. The reward of uncertainty keeps desire alive. Now, I want to step back for a moment and talk about the 3 words, because that's what we started with, isn't it? 3 magic words. And you've been waiting to find out what they are. Here's the truth. The 3 words aren't words at all in the way you were hoping. They're not a verbal formula. They're not a sentence to memorize, because if I gave you a sentence, you'd use it. It might work once, and then you'd be back here in 6 months wondering why it stopped working. The 3 words are a principle, an orientation, a mindset shift that once you embody it, changes the entire texture of how you show up with women. The 3 words are be genuinely interested, not interested in impressing, not interested in being liked, not interested in managing her perception of you. Genuinely, curiously, warmly interested in her actual inner world, in what makes her laugh, in what she's thinking about, in the contradictions that make her human, in the story she hasn't told yet. When a woman feels that kind of interest from a man, not performance, not charm, not a technique, but real warm curiosity about who she actually is, something unlocks in her. She becomes more open, more present, more invested. Because most people go through life feeling slightly invisible. Most interactions are transactional. Most men who approach her are interested in how she looks, in how it would feel to be with her, in what she represents, but not actually in her. The man who is genuinely interested in her as a person, while also embodying masculine presence and grounded energy and all the other qualities we've talked about, that man is so rare that she notices him immediately. Not because he used the right words, because he created the right experience. Be genuinely interested. Now let's put this all together, because I want you to see the full picture clearly. You've been operating with an incomplete map. You were trying to use sincerity and availability to build attraction. And those things are not bad things, but they're not the language attraction actually speaks. The real language of attraction is energy, presence, challenge, scarcity, attention, depth, touch, mystery, and underneath all of it, genuine interest in her as a person. When you combine these 7 triggers, when you start showing up as a man who is grounded in his own identity, who challenges her gently, who has a full life, who listens with real intention, who shares his depth without collapsing, who touches with lightness and respect, and who allows himself to be genuinely complex and varied and real. You stop being a man who is trying to win her over. You become a man she's trying to understand. A man she's drawn towards without always knowing why. A man she thinks about when you're not there. That shift is not small, it's everything. And here's what I want you to understand about the journey ahead. You don't need to become perfect at all of this overnight. You don't need to script conversations or run mental checklists in real time. What you need is awareness. Because awareness changes behavior at the level where it actually matters. Once you truly understand that attraction is a subconscious experience, that it responds to energy and pattern and the emotional texture of your presence, you stop trying to say the right thing and you start being the right presence. And that's a completely different game. A game you can actually win because it's no longer about performance. It's about who you actually become. Real tools, not tricks. Use them with respect and intention. Bring them into your interactions with genuine care for the women you're meeting. These aren't strategies to manipulate someone into feeling something false. They are the authentic expression of a fully realized man. And they deserve to be used in that spirit. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be bolder. You don't need to completely reinvent your personality. You need to stop apologizing for having standards. Stop shrinking yourself to make her comfortable. Stop making her the center of gravity in your universe before she's earned that position. Stop flooding her with attention and availability before real connection has been established. Start being present. Start being curious. Start being grounded in who you are and what you're building. Start having a life so real and so full that your attention toward her feels like a privilege rather than a default. Start listening like her words actually matter. Start sharing yourself in a way that shows depth without broadcasting fragility. Start touching with intention and lightness. Start letting yourself be the complex, unpredictable, genuinely interesting human being you actually are. Do that, and you won't need scripts. You won't need magic words. You will simply become a man that women feel something real around. And that feeling, that pull, that inexplicable sense that there's something different about this one, that's what we're building here. Something changed in you just from watching this. Not because you memorized something, because you understood something. And understanding moves differently than information. Information sits in the mind. Understanding changes the way you move through the world. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were just untaught. And now you know more than most men will ever take the time to understand about how attraction actually works. That's a quiet power. Carry it carefully. Use it well. If you're ready to stop chasing and start becoming the man women genuinely desire, subscribe to Echoes of Her Desire now. Turn on notifications because the next one will shift your reality. Again, we're just getting started.